Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Grandmaster Dennis Borosh and you're watching my Dragon Days. This one versus Fabiano Caruana, the future World Championship challenger. Now this is a tabia from that match and a combination. So it's at the end where we begin. Curious little position, seemingly safe for Fabiano, as that rook and queen to stabilize the back rank. There's no ideas. Is there? Is it safe enough? Who knows? Knows. We'll come back to this one. But back to the beginning. So you might notice I have been playing the dragon in my early days, and this was the time when Caruana was playing e4 exclusively. Now these days he actually does play a bit of d4, but at those games it was only one e4 a la Bobby Fischer. c5, d6, takes, and I could have played g6, but I kind of suspected the knight c6, Caruana would go bishop e2, and then I could transpose back to the dragon. And believe it or not, that is the other reason it is worth studying the dragon variation, because occasionally, even in the Najdorf/the Rouser, you can get into favorable versions. And if you're already familiar with that system, it's an extra weapon that you can use. Now, Fabiano here played knight b3. The other main line is bishop e3, bishop g7, castles, castles, and bishop d7 with roughly even chances. Knight b3. Now, knight b3 is an interesting idea, trying to avoid every and any exchanges on d4. However, it does have one downside. Bishop g7, castles, castles, rook e1. Now, I could play with a6, b5, but I didn't really like the fact that there would be some pressure on my pieces via this long diagonal. I figured with this knight gone, I could improve on the usual plan of bishop d7, bishop e3, rook c8, knight e5, and play bishop e6 immediately. Now, as the knight is not attacking the e6 square, this bishop is very comfortable. And also, I am controlling that all-important c4 square, which will be useful once my knight starts slaloming to e5 via knight e5, knight c4, or it could even go via knight a5, knight c4. However, a bit of a side note, knight a5 is always very dangerous because it runs into this beautiful move e5, where black needs to withdraw his pieces, otherwise you lose a piece. Knight is not defended. Queen was the only one defending the knight, but once you take, lose it. Therefore, it's much more accurate to bring the knight to the center and go knight c4 from there. But in any case, my opponent, that is Fabiano, played bishop f1, classical plan, trying to pressurize my e7 pawn with ideas of bishop g5 and knight d5. So my goal in this position is twofold. One of them is to stymie this attack and also to put pressure on the c2 pawn and the e4 one if I can. Now the c2 one is easier to attack, so just played rook c8, getting the rook on the file. Simple, but good. Bishop g5, knight e5. And I like this move because it blocks off the pressure and there's not enough pressure on e7. However, Fabiano is relentless. He's trying to put pressure on the e7 pawn plus the f6 knight. Now this bishop ain't that strong, but this knight is very strong. So it's a good idea to exchange it off. He takes d5, queen d7. Now here I could have played h6, trying to ask where this bishop is going. Because if it goes to e3, it no longer has any pressure on the queen and the pawn on e7. And if it goes to h4, then it no longer helps out on the queen side. So knight d4 is never supported by the bishop anymore. That's why these little moves are so strong. But we were both teenagers, so we didn't know anything like these little subtle moves. But I still like my move queen d7, just connecting my rooks and planning to expand on the queen side, doing what we so-call the minority attack. And though I have only 2 pawns, I will be the aggressor on this side of the board and not white. c3, just making sure my bishop doesn't have any scope. Rook e8, making sure there's nothing funny ever happening on e7. Bishop e3, a6, bishop d4, knight c4. So not only I'm trying to attack that b2 pawn, I'm also trying to get closer to that d5 pawn over there. Takes, takes. But now my plan is abundantly clear. I can combine the threat of going minority attacking with b5, b4 against that c pawn, and also go queen f5 against the d5 pawn. Knight d2, rook c8. I was considering rook c7, however bishop b6, rook c8, c4, I would have a very passive position, which you do not want to have if you're playing the dragon. Rook c8, knight e4. I do think c4 still would have been better. I can try with b5 with some counter chances. Knight e4, queen f5. Once you find the plan in the dragon, you must go for it. And that's what I'm doing in this one. Knight f6, takes, takes. Queen takes f6. Now e takes f6 is also interesting. However, I did not want to create a weakness on d6. Queen f6. Now probably my opponent was kind of happy with the position. Everything looks fairly even. However, there's a big difference. This pawn, even though not isolated, if I get b5 in, it'll be isolated from the supportive b2 and c3 pawn, and then I will have a free hand attacking that pawn. a4, queen f5, immediately going at the target. Queen b3, queen d7. Still, first comes safety, and then we can go hunting the d5 pawn. e4, c5. Just preparing this b5 break. e1, b5, and no longer do you have this c4 move, which is important, because in that case the d5 pawn will be a constant target. AB, AB, rook d1, rook a8, c4, takes, takes, and this is the moment where we started, and it seems like there's nothing wrong with white's position. If you calculate rook d5, rook d5, rook a1, rook d1, white is completely fine, up a healthy rook. There's nothing to see here. Literally, there's nothing to see here. However, there was one devilish idea that I spotted, and that is queen b7. Now, you can't even take my queen, because my lone rook will checkmate you. The rook takes c1, rook d1, rook takes d1, and it's checkmate. The lone rook defeats the whole army of white pieces. And there's actually no defense, believe it or not. If Fabiano would go queen d1, I'd still take on d5, take, and the same thing happens over again. I'll take on c1, take on d1, and it's over. There's not much you can do. And even though white has plenty of active pieces, it's the back rank that's going to undo white in this case. Now you can try to go rook c8, and that is something that he did. But queen d3 again runs into queen takes d5, and these rooks might attempt to go back, but they can't help the checkmate. So in fact, in this position, rook d5, rook c8 check was played. Good practical try. After queen takes c8, white is forced to take with the queen, otherwise, again, some back rank ideas show up. Queen d5, rook b8, targeting this good old pawn on b2, and there's two reasons why black is close to winning. One, I'm up a pawn. Two, I have the better structure, while my opponent is sort of struggling with two pawn islands. d4, c2. And these are those typical moves that you need to make even if you're up a pawn, up a piece, or just simply attacking. You have to keep the attack rolling. Just because you have the advantage doesn't mean you can let go the initiative. Rook e1, but that runs into queen b2. And if you take again, rook b1 is going to win the game. h4 was played, e6, just making sure everything's defended, and this pawn got a little weakened, but I'm just one move away from making sure that's defended as well. Queen e7, e2, over defending, winning time. King f1, check, rook b1. Just making sure that there are no pieces left. Check, queen e4, forcing more exchanges. Check, e5, blocking it up. f1, takes. And here, Caruana resigned, not waiting for d5, where I would have 2 extra pawns and a clear endgame. So I really hope you learned a bit of this dragon variation. One important thing that you have to take away from it is that you always have to look for these knight e5, knight c4 slaloming ideas and to isolate 5 pawn. Hope you had a good time watching this video, and if you have any thoughts, comments, or other opening questions, feel free to ask away in the comment section. With that, I'm out. Have a good day or night, wherever you are. Bye-bye.